G'day YouTube, Warbles on a lot here. With one of those dreaded bathroom in a motel videos. But anyway, I figure this is probably the best, most evenly lit enclosure within my attainability. So we're just going to have to go with it. I've just about finished week 6 of a 7-week course of Chemo-RadioTherapy for the evil twin that was the size of an apple hanging out the edge of my neck when I came here 6 weeks ago. So how's it going? Well, I don't think it's going pretty well. I feel a lot better now than I expected to feel. I do understand it's not a linear progression, it is a geometric progression. So you start off, and at the end of the first week you feel about twice as bad as you felt at the start of the first week from the treatment. Meanwhile, you start to feel a bit better from the treatment. The effect is happening and the side effects haven't kicked in yet. Every week, at the end of it, you feel about twice as bad as you did at the start of it. So I'm coping pretty well, and I'm not actually feeling twice as bad at the end of this week as I did at the start of it. But tomorrow is yet to come, and there is another week of it. One more dose of cisplatin, another, I've got 6 more to go. So how is it actually going? Well, I had a friend once who had a dog that got mange, and the dog was really old and it got really sick, and the mange was taken over, and then eventually the dog got so sick that the mange died, and then the dog got better and it grew its hair back, and they say this might be going to be something a bit like that. I've still got, you know, a fragment of the beard that's not too bad over on my left side. I've got the left side of my handlebar moustache is still there. The right side's looking a bit weedy. And as for down here, yeah, well, there's not a lot of beard there at all. It's nearly all come away. And this here is kind of what's left of the evil twin, which was, you know, as I said, half the size of an apple and very frightening to look at. And I was hanging onto the beard back then to try and disguise it and stop from frightening the horses in the street. The inside of my mouth, yeah, not much fun, because the idea is to burn the tissue with a beam that's mostly coming in from this side, and it's a divergent beam. I don't know quite how much it diverges, 5 or 7 degrees or something, maybe 10 degrees, but when you go in there, they put you on a bed and they raise the bed up and they stick your head in the Linear-Accelerator, and it's got 3 shields around it, and one of them's kind of like a target. And yeah, the beam comes out of one of these 3 flat panels, and they can go 210 degrees, traverse this way around my neck, because they don't want to burn the brainstem, they don't want to burn the optic nerves. I think they can possibly go a few degrees above and below the axis, but the theory is they figure out which bit of tissue they want to burn in here, and then they stick their cone-shaped diverging beam in so that, well, if you're looking to burn something that's maybe that big, the cone touches the outside edges of the chunk you want to burn, and then you swing the cone around through this 210 degrees you can come at. So all the tissue, except the bit that's in the centre where the cone is pivoting, it only gets a very transient moment of the beam going through it, whereas the bit in the middle, it cops the whole lot. And every day they come back and they do that to different bits of it. And it's all very cunning, and they sure seem to know what they're doing because it's going away. I am a lot more of a redneck than I ever used to be, and they give you a special Strata XRT cream to stop you from getting the radiation dermatitis, and you can see where it's coming out, presumably between the outside of my brain case and the skin, rather than shooting through the back of my brain, because I'm not getting any cerebellar ataxia or anything like that. I'm able to walk and talk and everything's going right. Swallowing is getting a bit interesting because everything's burnt on the inside of my mouth, as you can imagine. It's as bad or worse than over here where the concentrated shit goes in. And everything tastes sort of like slippery Vaseline with sand mixed into it. So they seem to know in advance what your symptoms are going to be 3 or 5 days down the track. So You get your first couple of doses of radiotherapy and then they give you the strata cream and tell you to put it on every day at the same time. Takes 24 hours, wash it off, put it on, wash it off, put it on. You've got to have a shower every day. That's a newie for a hill dweller. Haven't done that for a while. But it's copable, it's doable, you know, you've got a shower to do it in. So, then later on they say, oh here, try this, we'll give it to you because it's $80 at the chemist. It's called Muco-Soothe and it's lignocaine in a jelly, and you just put a bit of that in your mouth and swirl it around for 5 minutes and then spit it out. And then you wait 15 minutes and then it's anaesthetised inside of your mouth so you can't feel the uncomfortableness of swallowing with burnt mouth. And then for the general uncomfortableness of the dryness and the crackness and the third degree sunburn on the inside of the throat, last Friday I said, oh by the way, I'll write you this script for oral morphine. And I thought, Jesus, they want me to have morphine for the pain of the treatment. And I just keep reminding myself and surprising the different people I tell it to, if you're getting treatment for an aggressive cancer that's going to, well, if I hadn't got treated, I don't know whether I would have made it too much further past the next equinox. So that, you know, I'd have another month from now to then, and then I would expect to either strangle or starve myself to death because it would occupy too much space on the inside, or it would go through a big artery in the floor of the mouth and you just go down in a red fountain and make a mess. So 7 weeks coming down here and taking cytotoxic chemotherapy up the arm once a week and having my head cooked every day, it's not a problem because the option is to curl up and die. And you meet people down here who had their first lot of radiotherapy 19 years ago and they're 80. Well, I'm 61. You know, is society going to be providing me with enough wherewithal to keep my lifestyle together in another 19 years? If I get through this, it probably won't be cancer that kills me. It'll be some other bloody thing, you know, like a truck on the road trying to ride a push bike to town to get groceries when I can't get petrol and somebody else has still got trucks. Who knows? And I'm learning a lot. I'm coming up to date on all sorts of stuff. I've had so many wrong ideas about chemotherapy and radiotherapy, and every person has a different cancer, and every person with cancer has a different cancer. And each cancer has a specific different treatment. And two people who've got superficially both got, cancer of the tonsil and the mouth, cancer of the tonsil and the mouth. And one person gets a heap of chemotherapy, so much so that they have to stop it because it's too much and it's freaking them out and making them sick. And other people get peg tubes and I couldn't have a peg tube and I don't want a nasogastric, so I'm just forcing myself to eat. They gave me a fright last week. I'd lost 9% of my body mass since they weighed me when I came down before I lost the teeth. And then afterwards, maybe it was after I lost the teeth, but it was in July. And from the 18th to the 18th, the first month, I lost 7%. And they said, when you lose 10% of your body mass, we have to put the nasogastric down. I put on 2.5 kilograms last week. Put myself on a fluid food intake log and push fluids. And yeah, I'm remaining hopeful that between the gargling and swallowing soluble Panadol and the morphine to take the edge off in the late afternoon and at night time, and the Muco-Soothe to numb the inside of the mouth, and the idea that you can put sachets of creamy soup in a bowl and heat it up in the microwave, and you can just sort of wait for it to get to the right temperature and slurp it down, and smoothies in the magic bullet, it's all working. And with the daughter down here, yeah, this place is brightened up considerably. And she's just been out for a walk in a grocery shop. She can have alcohol even if I can't. Yep. And I haven't read any bloody New Scientist. I've got months worth of that. For the first time in my life, I have 3 unread Aeroplane Monthly magazines. Look at that. Look at that, 3. I haven't done any reading on the stuff that I brought down here, on my Aboriginal history and surviving New England and biggest estate on earth. I also haven't, apart from writing a YouTube comment about that photo which appeared in the Drakenifel video, haven't done anything reading because I've been fully occupied playing with getting treated for cancer. The e-bike, I did 5.4 kilometres or 5.6 kilometres on it yesterday. I tend to like doing that in the middle of the day. And I've had a bit of a saga trying to get permission to make a video in the Linear-Accelerator. So a couple of weeks ago, on the 7th of the 8th, I wrote to the Director of the Cancer Institute, "Dear Sir, Madam, please forgive the handwritten letter. I did not think to bring my typewriter. I had already inquired at an operational level and pushed it all the way up to the people who run the Linear-Accelerator, and they said, well, you know, my boss's boss says it's above his pay grade, so, you know, forget about it, mate. You can't make a video in the Linear-Accelerator. You've already made one in the chemotherapy room that they didn't know they couldn't give you permission to make, so never thee mind." So I wrote this. "I'm writing to request 2 favours from you. We're only going to deal with one of them in this video. Second one, we resolved it. They were right, I was right. We didn't have to have anybody grant anybody's favours. First, I'm seeking permission to make a short video for my YouTube channel, Warbles on a Lot, within which I would like to, quote, capture the atmosphere of being treated in your linear accelerators, to be able to share the experience with my viewers and subscribers on my small channel, which has never been monetised. On my first day of chemotherapy, I was apparently mistakenly given permission to capture such a video during my first dose of cisplatin on the 18th of the 7th. Video is titled, During Chemotherapy, 70 milligram cisplatin. I do not work from a script. I use an old Nokia Asha 301 mobile phone's video camera, so I would not be seeking to be intrusive or to interrupt proceedings in any way. My idea involves showing the delightful artwork leading up to our encounter within the linear accelerator, without including anybody in the frame to preserve privacy. Ideally, then I would set my camera on pause on my tripod frame to show where the table lifts me up to, so that as your staff depart the chamber, they could unpause the camera on their way out and pause the video again when they return 8 minutes later. Thus, this should also result in nobody but myself being filmed unless your staff desire to include themselves in the video. Ideally, I would be permitted to include the interior of the chamber in which a linear accelerator resides and its control panel for added atmosphere. Because I am not equipped for conducting any post-production editing, the video would be made in a single continuous take with pauses and jump cuts made as described. Using the pause button, the audio track will be recorded live, and you, the staff and or your media unit personnel will be able to vet the result, which I will happily delete if you find such to be necessary, without uploading it. On the one hand, the result will be potato grade, but on the other hand, I was awarded a gold-coloured medal from the Falmouth University in Cornwall, England in 2013 for winning the low technology division of their EqualsProject, an international YouTube video making contest. So at least the potato will be well operated. My intention is to depict and share how very well I have been treated, being treated, and to show what is involved in the radiotherapy side of my chemotherapy. If the answer is in the negative, then I will cope with that, but I very much hope that you will choose to grant me this permission. So that was the letter. And next day in chemotherapy, or a couple of days later in chemotherapy, I had a visit from Stuart Greenham, not Greenhill as I have in the second letter, because names and faces and details like that I'm not good at. Blame the second head injury. First one I kind of got over it, but not as well as I thought I did. Second one, it really brought it to my attention. Face name recognition, Warbles is kind of lousy at. So anyway, he said that, they'd said no because they're control freaks really. And, you know, last time he got a video made about this place was like 8 years ago, and it took him 5 years to get permission, and it took 4 days, and it was really, you know, super highly produced and controlled. And, you know, my request is something they've never dealt with. He said what he would like is if I could explain what it was that I was hoping to do, and then he might at some later date be able to, you know, use that as leverage to pressure them to let him make a video that will meet their standards, but, you know, along the lines of what I'm suggesting, because it seems like a good idea to him. And I took that when he told me on Friday last week to mean that he'd like me to rewrite the letter and give more details and throw him a bone, and not have the other issue in the same letter, because that's all resolved. So here's what came up on the weekend. Dear Stuart, and it's STU, not STEW, so one more in the name recognition file.
I'm writing to thank you for having made representation on my behalf to your chain of command, attempting to secure permission for me to make a little video documentary showing my view as a patient of encountering your linear accelerators. As we expected, your media unit has shied away from agreeing to my making an unscripted video. However, perhaps, possibly, maybe, if they peruse the accompanying quote mud map and quote shot list of cinematographic notes, then perhaps the powers that be might be persuaded to at least let me make the video, even if they later decide to decline to agree for me to upload it. Probably the closest videos in my back catalogue to what I would like to do might be Gullah Gallery at Glendinis, Land of the Beardies History House and Museum, National Transportation Museum, visiting my first aeroplane. In that all three are examples of my attempts to favourably portray the subject of the video. What I have in mind is to play up the art gallery aspect of encountering your linear accelerators, if that makes sense. As I have mentioned previously, my channel has never been monetarised nor partnerised. I have no Patreon accounts. I am not on YouTube to try to make money. I am on YouTube to be able to share the sights and insights which I encounter and which occur to me, in which I think other people may be interested. I would expect no more than a few hundred people might actually watch the video. However, my most popular video has 730,000 views, so I will make as good a job of the work as my equipment and skill sets permit, if I am permitted to have a go. And with luck, perhaps this second attempt may receive a more favourable answer from your media unit. Time will tell. Thanks again for trying. And then Bauble sat down to draw from memory a mud map of the facility. Not actually accurate to scale, but showing the bits of the floor plan that I was interested in and fixated on. So there are some mistakes in it, and they're kind of funny. So we have shot one, piece to camera, introducing it out the front of the facility. We then come inside and we have shot two, and we start off looking down the hallway towards the doctor's appointments secretary, past the general reception painted secretary, and we slowly pan down to look down the corridor to where we have a little buzzer on the wall and the door to get into the chemotherapy section. Then we have position number 3, where we do a dolly shot going past the doctor's appointment area, showing the doorway, and then turning around to here to show the video screen, which is constantly playing a nature tape loop. Here we have a mistake because that screen's not hanging in the middle of the room, it's up on that wall there. Yeah, you get that. And we have a fish tank and more chairs, and that little space there is for patients waiting to see doctors and their friends, relatives, carers, anybody who wants to come with them. Tuck out here past the toilet, and then we come down a bit of a corridor, and we have the radiotherapy appointment clerk. And over here, we have the most palatial style of a waiting room, just for the people who are getting linear accelerator treatment. I particularly wanted to show off the sink with its boiling water and ice water all on the same tap with the red and blue buttons. And they, again, as I said, they have one of these nature screens in the middle of the room, which you can watch or not, depending on your predilections. And then we come down this corridor and we have a little waiting room and a set of scales. And here we have the 2 control units for the 2 linear accelerators, because in the centre there's a box of very comprehensive magic tricks, and there's a linear accelerator sticking out either side of it. Now, I was fixating on getting the proportions right for here, and then I came over here and drew the rooms too bloody small, so I invented a whole heap of shielding in there that's not there. These rooms are just bigger in real life. So, you know, as I said, it's a shot map. And the bit that gets kind of interesting is that as you come in, there's a nice chunky piece of Aboriginal artwork hanging up here. There's a nice chunky piece of Aboriginal artwork hanging up here. along here and along here. There's small photos, very arty-farty. Some of them might be paintings. As you start coming down here, there's another chunk of paintings. And then once you get to here, the Aboriginal motif is very, very strong. Both the linear accelerators have got Aboriginal names, and the control banks for this one are here. This is Linac 1 and this is Linac 2. The control rooms are there, and there are big warning lights and beam ready, beam off, beam on. Don't go in there. And of course, these mazes are to contain the radiation, or the X-rays, the radiation. And as you come along here, there's one big painting there, and then there's massive amounts of beautiful artwork, perfectly lit. And the first time you go down there, you're completely bedazzled by the artwork, and then you come around into the Sanctum Sanctorum, and it's all very sci-fi-ish, you know, and the control panels on opposite sides, and there's a ritual where you have to identify yourself, tell them what they're going to radiate, and then you finally get on the table, and they lock you down in your cast and your own personal mask, and you go into the mask, and they chant backwards and forwards as to how many centimetres inferior they're going to go, and the cone beam, and blah, blah, blah. And then they give you the starting 30 seconds buzzer, and they leave the room, and they sort of toddle out from, well, there's a control panel here and there's a control panel here, and they both toddle out and come up to this control panel along here, and that's where they run the machine from. And the first thing that you get to hear is about, I'd say, a minute to a minute and a half of a CAT scan, and the CAT scan apparently pulls 17 kilovolts. I'm used to an X-ray being about 2.5 kilovolts for 1.5 seconds or something back in the 1980s when I used to take X-rays, still shots. So yeah, there's what I would think of as a fair bit of radiation in the CAT scan. Then they seem to think about it for a minute or two, and then they crank up the linear accelerator. Now let's go and have a bit of a look at the poster of the linear accelerator that I've been linked, because the answer to this letter has turned out to be kind of a no. I suppose I better show you the shot list before I return to look at the linear accelerator. Proposed shot map for video documentary, My Linear Accelerator Encounter. The video is to be shot in one continuous take using 14 jump cuts, achieved using the pause button, shot in sequence, edited in camera, old school style. Think of World War II and Vietnam combat camera work. Shot 1, piece to camera outside the building, introduction and précis. Shot 2, identifying general reception, slowly pan 90 degrees left and zoom out to 5 power telephoto explaining chemotherapy wards at the end of the corridor. Shot 3, slow handhold dolly shot past Dr. Secretary's office. Shot 4, view of the calming tape loop on the overhead screen in appointments waiting room. Shot 5, slow dolly shot past small artwork. Shot 6, view of radiotherapy secretary's office, slow pan 90 degrees right to show radiotherapy waiting room. Shot 7, view of calming tape loop on overhead screen. Shot 8, view of refreshments including demonstration of tap dispensing boiling and iced water. Shot 9, walking up to controls of Linac 1 and Linac 2. Shot 10, view of waiting change rooms, close-up of Strata XRT poster. Special cream they give you. I think I mentioned that earlier. Shot 11, slow handheld dolly shot across artwork. Shot 12, slow handheld dolly shot across artwork. Shot 13, entry into chamber. 360 degree walkabout, pan around, showing layout. Shot 14, camera on tripod. Paused frame where my head will be when the table elevates and the linear accelerator is working. After I'm restrained in place as the crew depart the chamber, one member unpauses my camera, and thus the treatment is recorded with only me in the shot. On their return, the staff pauses my video camera again, and then I hopefully show the different artwork in the mirror image linear accelerator on the other side of the electronics. Shot 15, before closing the narrative with shot 16 to camera again on the front of the building. Chris Wharton, RGN retired. Warbles on a lot channel on YouTube. So yeah, that was submitted by me on Monday. Today's Thursday, and he hasn't heard back. So therefore, at this conjecture in the pointiness of the time, My schedule next week for the final week has radiotherapy occurring at 8 a.m. on Monday, 12:45 on Tuesday, 1:40 on Wednesday, 11:30 on Thursday, and 8:15 on Friday, and that means there is no room in that scheduling for me to be doing radiotherapy in the late afternoon and making a video when there's no other patients around. However, if that changes, I will be notified next week, and as I said, if you can tell me on Thursday that it's going to happen on Friday, I will be there. All I've got to do is carry that one tripod, which folded up is not a grave task. So, by the way, my child was out at the beach this morning and she came back via the supermarket with supplies for me and for her. Now, let's go and have a look at what I sort of think I almost can stumble about the linear accelerator. Right, so anyway, poor old Stuart keeps getting stuck with the fact that Warple's on a lot is an example of truth in labelling. He came to talk to me this morning, I got told in the X-ray department at, 8:30, 9 o'clock, that, no, it was 10:30. Stuart would like to talk to you in about half an hour. You can either go and come back or, we'll see you tomorrow. I was, oh no, I'll wait, so. Yeah, you got to see me. And instead of 11 o'clock, it was about 20 past 11. He didn't get rid of me for about 20 odd minutes. And at the end of it, because he feels pretty confident in not going to let me make the video next week, he said, look, I know where there's a poster because I've been asking him a few questions. He said, I can lend you the poster, and I don't know whether the manufacturer will be happy for you to have their name on it, so therefore I haven't showed it. And he doesn't want to get in trouble for it, but he hasn't been actually cleared to show this to the public, so he might be sticking his neck out a bit. But he's just so happy to have the level and persistence and quality of the feedback that therefore I get a bit of see what you can do with this. So I've said I won't put this to air until after we get the answer, because it may be that this goes to air afterwards to say this is how I got permission, because I figure that not only are they scared that I'll make a bitch bosh hash of the video, can I use my mobile phone in your linear accelerator please, Mr. Hospital Man? But they're also worried that if I'm allowed to do this, then everybody who's got a mobile phone will want to video the linear accelerator, and that'll stuff everything up. So if nothing else, this shows how far you have to go to try and get official permission to make a YouTube video on a linear accelerator that's not going to offend anybody's sense of commercialisation or monetisation or making a profit out of being treated by the free public hospital system. Yeah, takes over a month. You've got to be the person getting your head cooked, and you've got to write 2 letters, and still you may not get it, but you may be allowed to put this up as a consolation prize. So here's what we've got. They told me at one stage that the beam that's coming out of this machine and going into me is 6.1 megavolts worth of X-rays or photon equivalents. That's how much sunlight equivalent it would be, but it's delivered via X-rays. 6.1 million volts of X-rays. And I immediately thought, well, a megavolt is a megawatt, and the windmills at Glen Innes are 3.2 megawatts, so you wouldn't have 95% transmission and conversion efficiency, so they must have about 3 windmills powering this machine. How come your head's not exploding? And the immediate answer to that was, no, it's not that much power, because we only feed into the machine 160 amps of 480 volt 3-phase current, so that's only 76,800 watts. And I figured there must be a big bank of step-up transformers to take the 160 amps at 76,000 or 77,000 kilovolts and step that up to 6.1 million, and the amps would come right down. But anyway, in answer to that question, I was presented with this. And the story is that over here, we have a cavity magnetron, which is the sort of thing you would expect to be powering a World War II radar unit. And it generates radio frequency waves. And those radio frequency waves come from the cavity magnetron, and they run down here through a waveguide. And that gets you here, where on the one hand, you've got the start of a ring of circular magnets in the linear accelerator. And what they do is they are like donuts, with the inside of the donut is positive and the electron beam is negative. So if you've got a pulse of electrons coming out of here, and the electrons here are getting attracted by a bunch of magnets in front of it, and the magnets are positive, then the electrons get accelerated by that bunch of magnets. So this phenomenon happens in pairs, going up the spout, so to speak. And the first thing that happens is the electrons get accelerated by the donuts, and they come to this four-sided electromagnet where it's kind of the opposite. The field coming out of that permanently the whole time, it has negative faces on the inside, so those four flat plates repel the electrons into a square. So that's the square waveguide. After the square waveguide, then we have a circular waveguide. On the circular waveguide, it does exactly the same thing as a square waveguide, only the inside of that is a bigger donut. So what you've got is pulses of electrons being accelerated to ever higher speeds by trying to follow the magnetic attraction as it moves at light speed up this row of inner circular donuts, which are pulsed positive magnetic waves, which the electrons are constantly attracted to because the electrons are negatives and the magnetic field they're following is a positive, so they get sucked in. And they run roaring, hurdle, 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 up. And then they run into these three, which are, again, permanent magnets. Forgive that figure of speech. What they do is they have a permanently in situ magnetic field, and it's in situ when the current is on. They're electromagnets, but they don't reverse. They're DC permanent magnets, or DC electromagnets, and they take the beam and they bend it. It looks like probably about 60 degrees down, and then another one 60 degrees up, and then they turn it down through pretty much 90 degrees, more than 90 there, and then they have these two focus guides for the cones, and then you get into that little louver, and it uses very thin tungsten plates to actually produce the divergent conic beam according to our instructions. 1. The magnetron generates pulses of radio frequency waves which are transmitted into the circular waveguide via the rectangular wave, as we have heard the walls explaining. 2. The circular waveguide accelerates and focuses the electron beam. It's surrounded by coils, magnets that focus and steer the electrons into a fine beam. 3. After exiting the waveguide, there is no further acceleration of the electrons. They then enter the flight tube, in which the electron beam is bent achromatically. So chromatic aberration is what happens when you put a series of circular glass lenses together, and each one has a different magnifying fraction, and what you wind up with is circular rainbows all over every light high point colour aberrations. So this is to take the X-ray equivalent of chromatic aberration out of the beam. So then we have 5. High energy electron beams strike a small tungsten target, creating a high energy X-ray beam with energies between 4 and 25 megavolts. So that's how it's done. 6. The primary collator assembly confines the X-rays to a cone-shaped beam to minimise leakage. There we go. The collimators. 7. The ion chamber assembly measures the dose of the radiation delivered to the patient and monitors the beam quality, providing feedback used to automatically control flatness and symmetry. This thing delivers radiation in grays, and grays is a measure of how much energy is transferred to the target. It's like watching a block of ballistic jelly and measuring how much it cavitates and makes the block of jelly jump around on the target. Sieverts and millisieverts is a measure of how much energy is given off by a radioactive source, like a lump of uranium They measure that in sieverts and millisieverts. They have scintillation meters and Geiger counters they measure in sieverts. Two different things, chalk and cheese. One is a measure of the power of the radiation leaving the object. This is a measure of how much is delivered to the target. You know, the greys doesn't talk about how much goes out the other side, it's how much damage on target in Air Force terms, military terms. 8, the multi-leaf collimator uses fine leaves of tungsten to shape the radiation beam to match the tumour space. So yeah, and all that is radio controlled or remote controlled from somebody who can't see anything except the screens and the readouts. 9, real-time digital monitoring and control of all parameters including MLC gantry and beam generation control. 10, the electron gun generates electrons and propels them into the waveguide to be captured and accelerated by the radio frequency waves. Okay, 10 does not appear to appear on the diagram. Oh yes, here we go. There we go. And now you know. But that's as good as I can come up with at the time of making this video. And if it's as good as I can come up with by tomorrow week, then this will go to air. So let me, I will make the video that I have described to you and to them in my mud map and shot list, and you will get to see just how magic the experience is when you come in with cancer for the first time to be treated after your first dose of cisplatin, and you're all filled full of newness and change, and you get this just brilliant display of original art, perfectly lit, taking you into the sanctum sanctorum, where they've got this bloody great big machine that's going to burn the shit out of your cancer and leave you coming out of it fragile, knocked around a bit, but if everything works well, definitely not dead yet, more like recovering from serious treatment for a fairly bad cancer. As a couple of people have said to me, it's a bad cancer to have, but we've got a good treatment, but the treatment is grueling. And if you can't put up with the side effects, well, you know, go and look for some placebo effect somewhere else and play with voodoo or something. But, you know, if you want the treatment, get the treatment. Just because you saw somebody else get knocked around by the treatment for some other cancer 20 years ago doesn't mean that what they're going to offer you for your cancer is so scary that you should run away with it, run away from it without thinking about it and paying attention to what it is they're trying to do and why they're trying to do it. And how about, instead of judging on the basis of no information and a lot of fear, let the people who do it for a living guide you into what they know is going to be the best possible outcome for whatever it is your problem is. So yeah, that's where I'm at. 6 weeks into a 7-week treatment. Inside of my mouth is really sore and painful. Beard's looking mangy. Some of the hair on the back of my neck's falling out. I really do look like a proper tall redneck, you know, with the skin falling off from the level of the sunburn, all the really dark stuff falling off this side. But yeah, if you've got cancer, I've got to say, get it in Australia because pre-medical care is just bloody marvellous. And if you've got cancer, accept the fact as early as you can, because if you come late to the party, you're going to get really heavy duty treatment. Because I should have gone insisting the doctors look at the inside of my mouth maybe 5 years ago, definitely 2 years ago, certainly before I waited until April this year. So, all going well. And I know a lot more about linear accelerators now than I used to do. And if you see this, then you will too. And if you don't see this, it means you've seen a better movie instead. And I might have to put this up anyway just to show how much work it is involved in getting permission to make the better movie, which I think it will do. And yeah, we'll see how long it takes for the further face fuzz to grow back. If it does, if it doesn't, well maybe I might think about shaving it off. But at the moment, it's acting like airflow tufts on the surface of the wing. So walk was on like YouTube. My daughter's come back and my son's tried to ring me, so I better get back on with, you know, the wife was a cancer patient and stop being a video cinematographer, bragging about what he's been up to in between getting treatment. Have a good one, because I'm doing my best and it's not going anywhere near as badly as I feared it was. Ciao.